Hello, again, Damien here from Cloud Technology Experts. In this video, lesson 7, we're going to learn how to manage users and groups. Again, I already have my slide here on the left and I have my Ubuntu server here on the right. So I will basically go to the slides and perform the activities or the hands-on activities on the right inside Ubuntu. So if you don't have your Ubuntu up and running or any Linux that you want to use, make sure that you have that up and running. Again, this is the series on Linux fundamentals for beginners. All right, so let's go to the slides. So we'll be making good progress. We already did about 6 videos, and here we're going to be learning about users and groups. So the learning objective, by the time we finish, you should understand the different types of users in Linux. You should understand the database where the user information is stored. You should be able to create users and groups and see their permissions and assign them to groups. Okay, that's kind of like the overall objective for this video. All right, so the different type of users in Linux. We have the regular users, or we call them non-privileged users. Right now, this user is the root, okay, which is the third type of user that we have here. We have the regular users, we have the system users, which are the users that applications use. For example, when you install MySQL, it's going to have a user for managing its services. When you install Apache web server, it's going to have a user created for Apache web server. Likewise, if you install Nginx web server, it's going to create a user for managing the Nginx user or the Nginx service. So that is the second type of users, the system users, and then we have the root user, again, which is the privileged user. This is the super user. It has full power over this particular environment that you are looking at. So you can always differentiate which user you're dealing with. At this moment, we're dealing with root because it's a root at Ubuntu. Here, root is a username. Ubuntu is the name of the server that I am on. And it's basically, this tilde is showing me that we're in the home of root. And the pound sign shows me that I'm the root user. Even if I don't look at all this information here in Linux, once you see the pound sign at the end of this command here, you know that that is your root user. If you compare that to this, if I tap exit, you see now I'm now a regular user, and that regular user ends with $, and you can see how the formatting actually changes, but this is based on the distro I'm using. In this case, this is the user that logged in, which is me. This is the name of the server, like we saw it here. And I am inside the project directory, and you can see the $sign at the end. So that is how you can easily differentiate between regular users and root user just by looking at the end of the line that you have here. All right, so how do we see the regular user, the system users? Well, if you go to the database for users, if you do cat etc passwd, okay, if I cat that file, we learn how to use a cat in the other video. You will see that this file contains all the different types of users. Okay, again, if I want to paginate this so I can see it page by page, what command do I have to use? Well, we can use less. Let's use the less command. And less, you can see, is paginating it for us, and we can look at it page by page. So here we have the system user here called daemon, being, sees, on and on. In fact, most of the users we have here right now inside this file are system users. Towards the end, you're going to see the real users. For example, this is me here, and I'm the only non-system user here because that is the only user I've created so far. Okay, so let's look a little bit deep into this file. When you cut the file, you see that there's a format to how this file gets labeled or how the entries are made. So that is all the entry there, but you can also see it pasted here. inside this file. Basically, this file, each field ends with a colon. So the first field here is colon, which indicates my username, as you can see it here. That is my username. That is the username here. All right, then the next one, where you see that X, is the password. Whenever you see an X in the password field, it means that the password is actually stored in a file called etc shadow. Cat etc shadow. You will see the shadow file. Shadow. Okay, you say permission denied. I can become root, or can put sudo in front. Okay, so that file stores the password. In my own case, you can see the password here, which is all not in plain text. Okay, so that is to at least provide some security measure that someone cannot just open up this file and see my password. It's all hashed up, as you can see there. Okay, so while the information for the user is inside this file, the password is stored in etc shadow whenever you see an X for the password field, as you can see right here. And then this will be my user ID, this will be my group ID, this will be the comment, which is kind of like my actual name, and you can see all that is between the colon. So anything I put in there will be kind of like regarded as a comment, but whenever you put the username, it gets included in there. And then the next is my home directory. Every user needs to have a home directory. Again, we're looking between colon to colon. And the next line there is my default shell. Okay, as you can see, that will be my default shell. Okay, there are a couple of things you can do with this file later on. For example, if you don't want this user to be able to log in, if you want the password to expire, you can do a lot of things with this, but for now I'm going to keep it easy, simple. Okay, so if you look at this format, all of that is explained here. Username, password, user ID, group ID, user information or the comment field, then the home directory, then the default shell, which is the last one here, being bash. So if you're managing Linux, you cannot do without this file. You probably want to be managing this file from a higher level, like using things like Active Directory or LDAP. But other than that, this is the file that Linux uses for managing users. Quite simple, text-based. Each of the field is separated with a colon. And again, this file contains both the information for the regular users and the system users. All right, so now that we understand this database where our information will be going into, let's add some users. Currently, as you can see, I'm not the root user. So if I want to perform root root functions, I need to put sudo. I can say add user, which is the command you use for adding users. I can say add user Alex, and it's asking me to put a password. I'm going to put the same thing, Alex, repeat it. Okay, this is the comment field. I can say Alex, LSG, anything you don't want to be entered, just press enter. Yeah, is the information correct? Yes. Y is the default because it's capitalized. So if I want, I can just press enter, and that will indicate I say yes, or I can just press Y as well. All right, so the user has been added right there. Okay, so now if I tell etc password, all right, so I see the end, and in there I see Alex added to the end of the file. Okay, again, you can see the password is not here. It's going to be stored in etc shadow. All right, if you want to change the password for this user, so take note here. This is the user that logged in here is currently Damien Igbe. If Damien Igbe wants to change his password, he can type this command passwd, and he can change the password. If I press enter, that will help me change the password. But I don't really want to change the password, so I think I'm just going to press Control C or enter, and that will take me out. Okay. So hopefully I haven't changed anything, but it says password unchanged because I did not put anything. If I want to change the password for this user Alex that I just created, I won't be able to do that until I'm the root or I perform it as root privilege. So I can say sudo passwd Alex. In that case, it's asking me to supply the password for Alex. Okay, so and then if I don't want to change it, I just do enter, and it says password unchanged. If I want to change it, I just put those new information as well. So command passwd is a command used for changing the password. But so notice one thing though, the name of this file is passwd, right? At the same time, the command you use for changing password is passwd. So don't confuse them. All right, so if I want to delete this user, I can say sudo useradd or del user, and I can put Alex, and that will delete this user, removing cron tab, removing user Alex. So if I say ID, I can check this user called ID Alex, and it says Alex doesn't exist. But if I say ID Damien Igbe, I need to say ID DAID DA, and it gives me my information, my user ID, my group ID, and all of that. All right, so I can also add a group. I can say sudo group add dev team, and now I have a user I have a group called dev team. If I say groups is a command to see the groups you belong to. So currently I belong to Damien, sudo, and users. So that command will help me see my own group. Okay. But now, if I did not delete the user Alex, if I want to add user Alex to this group I just created, I can do this one's sudo user mod, which is kind of like user modify, uses arguments A and G. I can say dev team, and I can say, in this case, I can say Damien Igbe, since Alex, I deleted Alex. So I can expand this a little bit. Okay, all right, so user mod, All right, so now I have been added to dev team, and if I say groups, okay, yeah, whenever you add a user to a group, you need to log out and log back in before the group will show. So, but currently, I have been added to dev team, so now I belong to 4 groups. And of course, you can remove groups as well whenever you don't need them anymore. So let's do cat etc group. So just as we had the etc password for users, you could also have this file called etc group for the groups that are created in the system. All right, so those are the kind of like the most important files to know when you're working with users and groups. And those commands help you how to add users and all of that as well. Okay, so here we'll talk a little bit about permissions, but I won't go deep into this. When I'm doing this, I would like to illustrate for you to understand a couple of things. But the fact is, whenever you do ls-l to give you a long listing, you're going to see all this information here pop up. Everything here from start to finish, they have a meaning. So if we start from the right, this is the file we're dealing with. This is the date this file was created and the time it was created. This is the group of the owner. This is the owner of the file. And this is how many links it has. Currently, it has just 1 link, but sometimes you can create symbolic links and all of that. And so this file may have more than 1 link. Okay, then everything from here to here also has meaning, and here you have to pay attention. The first character here can either be a hyphen or a D. If it's a hyphen, it means it's a regular file. If it's a D, it means it's a directory. Okay, so those are the two things you notice here. It can be a different kind of object as well, but we'll look into those later on. For example, if you look objects in your dev, you're going to see different kinds. All right. So understand what has to be in the first space there, first character there. Then between here and here, there are going to be 9 characters. 9 characters grouped into 3 groups. Groups of 3. So this is the first group, this is the second group, and this is the third group. The first group here is for the owner. The second group here is for the group. And the last, for the group, this one here. And the last is for what we call others. That is, others mean the rest of the world. If you are not the owner and you are not in the group, the primary group, which is this one here, then the rest will belong to you. So here we're talking about permissions, meaning if I'm the owner of this file, in this case, the owner is Damien Igbe, he can do read, write, and no execute. So R stands for read, W stands for write, X stands for execute. This is the X here, execute, execute. Now, if you don't see it here, if you see a hyphen, it means that particular permission has been removed. So again, this is for the owner, in this case, Damien Igbe. Then the group that, which in this case is Damien Igbe, that this file belongs to, will be anybody that belongs to that group will be able to read this file, will be able to write to it, make some changes, but they will not be able to execute it because the execute flag again is a hyphen. Now, for every other person who is not the owner and is not in the group of this file called Damien Igbe, they can only read. They cannot write to it and they cannot execute it. And again, we're referring to this file. Everything about this line here refers to this file. Everything about this line here refers to file 2. Everything about this line here refers to file 2.txt. And everything we've been talking about so far applies to all of them. R for read, W for write, X for execute. And again, just to summarize, the first character here indicates whether it's a file or a directory or some special file. If it's a hyphen, it means it's a regular file. If it's a D, it means it's a directory. Then start looking at this into 3 groups of 3. First group for the user, second group for the group, and third for every other person. Okay, I'll probably do another video to go more into details, but for now, this is sufficient. And all that I'm saying are also here. So later on, we'll learn how to use the chmod command to perform changing the permissions on the file, and how to use chown, C-H-O-W-N, to change permission, to change the group of the file or the ownership of the file that we're talking about here. Okay, again, more video on that. Okay, so now you see I have been using this command called sudo, right? If you're not a root user and you want to perform admin roles or functions, you have to be able to use the command sudo to do that. But not everyone can do that because not everyone in the system need to have the system privileges. And so a way to control that is to make sure that any user that you want to be able to perform admin roles belongs to the user called sudoers. Okay, so if I clear my screen here, I showed earlier I say groups, that is, which is to show my groups, you see that I belong to the group called sudo. And that is the reason why I can use sudo pwd. That is the reason I can run pwd as root. If I don't belong to the sudo group and I type this command sudo, it's not going to work. It's going to give me some error. So the idea is, how do you control this group? How do you add users to the sudo group so they can perform some admin functions whenever they need to do that? Again, not everyone needs to do that, but some people might be given the privilege to do that. So, of course, make sure the user exists first of all. Make sure the user belongs to, do all the normal configurations you want to do. And then the way that Ubuntu does it is different from the way that Red Hat-based distros does it. So if you want to do for Ubuntu though, the command is here. You can do sudo user mod, which is to modify the user, u minus a and g, and then you put the group name, in this case sudo, because that's a group name as you can see here, and then you put the username Alex. But I don't have Alex created, so I cannot do that. But to do that, let me first of all create a user called Alex. I can say user add Alex. Let's put him back. Okay, let's do that as sudo. All right, so Alex is there now. I can set a password for Alex. Password Alex. Okay, again I can do sudo password Alex, and I can do okay, so password has been updated. If you notice, now I use this command here called useradd. There's a command called useradd and there's a command called add user. Just switch this one, put it in front. So either you use useradd or add user. Whichever one you prefer. Useradd, the one I use here, is very quick. It doesn't add all the other information. If you add the add user, it's going to ask you a bunch of questions. So mostly I like to use useradd, but either way it works. All right, so now we have this user called Alex. If I say ID Alex, this user now exists as Alex, right? So let's add him to the sudo group. I can say sudo user mod. Okay, user mod minus a g sudo Alex. All right, so now Alex belongs to the sudo group. So Alex now, if I log in as Alex, Alex should now be able to perform admin functions. Okay, so that is how you add a user. That is kind of like, if you don't want to remember the command, you can use this command called vsudo, vi sudo. Remember we did vi earlier. So this is kind of customizing vi for using sudo. So the command is vi sudo. If you enter that command, it's basically going to take you to the sudo file, and in here you can make the changes you want to make. Okay, so you can add that user that you want to have here. All right, so that's basically how you do that. So in this case here, you can add a rule and say Alex. You can add a rule, and basically you're going to modify one of this line here to look like this: Alex all equals all. Just basically following this format that you have here. Okay, let's make it look similar to what you have there. Oops. So let me delete that line. All right, so I'm not going to save this file just to be safe. Okay, so let's so Control X. So that was actually not VI, that was nano. So because if you come in here, it drops you into nano. And to quit nano, you always have to do, let me delete these lines here. You have to press Control W to save, and then you press Control X to quit. Save buffer, I'm going to say no. All right, so that's it there. Typically, you don't want to be logging in as root every time. There's something we call the principle of least privilege, which is to make sure that at any point in time, when you're on the Linux shell, you are taking security into consideration. So that's what we call here the least privilege principle, which means give people the permission they need to perform a function. Don't give them more, don't give them less. If you give them more, they won't be able, they could use the additional to infiltrate or hack the system. But if you don't give them enough, they may not be able to do their job. So it's a way to say, make sure that every user has just what they need to do their work. And these are some of the things you have to take into practice. Don't log in as root all the time. Maybe in rare situations, yeah, but not all the time. Give users only the privilege they need. Use a group to apply permissions. So using group to apply permissions make your life a lot easier. If I have 5 people in the DevOps team, instead of me giving them individual permissions 5 times, I can assign those permissions to a group and put all the users in there in the group. So instead of setting the permissions 5 times individually, I just do it once with the group and then add the users. So that will save you a lot of time. And then you can use all the time making sure that you're using users, adding them to the sudo group if you want them to be able to log in. And if you don't want them to be able to log in, again, like I said earlier, you can put a whole lot of stuff like no password, no login, all of that to restrict what they can do or even being able to log in. Okay, so again, those are the things you may want to know with users and groups. Every Linux environment needs to have users, okay? If this were being run in a university, for example, it could be that every student that got admission will have to have an account on this server, and that is where you have to be able to create users and create groups and all of that. Now, sometimes, again, you may not be able to do this. You may not want to do this manually. You can do it from things like AD, an Active Directory, or LDAP, and all of that. But you need users in the system, both the regular users and the system users and the root user to perform admin functions. Okay, so here again, here's a lab. You can pause the videos and then do the labs if you want to. Now add a user, call Alice, user Bob. Check the ID of those users like I did earlier. ID Alex, that will show you information about that user. And remember those commands. Create a group, group add project X, add users to the group, user mod like we just did for the sudo group, and then give Alice sudo access. Is that command there that you can type, which is similar, very similar to this, right? Because at the end of the day, sudo is a group, just like project X is a group here as well. All right, so you want to create a directory and make it available to other users. That's one option that you can use, but I'll talk more about those when I talk about permissions and when I talk about permissions. All right, so changing ownership and all of that, you have here a challenge where you can create a user named DevOps, assign them to sudo, create a directory with dev team and give them full access while restricting everyone else. All right, so this video again takes you through being able to create users and groups, being able to modify user group permissions, add users to sudo correctly, understand permissions, chmod and chown, which we'll come back to in another video, then how to apply the principle of least privileges to make sure that your environment is secure all the time, and to delete users, just do as we did with Alex, del user del, any one of those will work. All right, this is the end of the video. Again, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel and come back for more videos that we're going to be doing. Very soon, we're going to finish up the Linux fundamentals, and then we're going to move on to other stuff that you may need to learn in this day and age of tech. All right, again, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.